Prabha, we're live.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. A very good evening to you all from ACCA Middle East and South Asia, and I, Rama Khan, FCCA from ACCA Bangladesh. I'm very happy to welcome you to the last session of a 3-day-long celebration of Global Ethics Day, which falls in October. And as a professional body with ethics at heart, we, ACCA, have always celebrated this day with all the enthusiasm and magnificence. And this time, our partners also joined us. I would like to first thank our partners, CFA Society Bangladesh, CFA Society Pakistan, CFA Society Sri Lanka, HBL Habib Bank Limited, ICNA Pakistan, Pakistan Business Council, Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, Pakistan Stock Exchange, Pearl Initiative, and Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. This time, embracing the new normal, our theme of this day has been sustainability connected to ethics all along. And our first keynote speaker today is Helen Brand, Chief Executive ACCA. She will deliver her keynote via a recorded video message on rethinking sustainability. Over to you, Aksana.
I think voice is not receiving.
No audio. Yes.
We'll just play that again.
Good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for giving me this chance to join you today. Before we start, I'd like to thank our partners, CFA Institute Middle East, CFA Society Bangladesh, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, Habib Bank Limited, ICMA Pakistan, Pakistan Business Council Centre of Excellence in Responsible Business, CERB, Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, Pakistan Stock Exchange, and the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. This is such an important event which addresses the greatest issue of our times. Clearly, that is climate change, and the threat it poses doesn't just ask questions about the sustainability of business. It asks questions about whether the planet will still be habitable by the end of the century. How we respond as individuals and as a society also raises questions about ethics, because we have a choice. Either we can ignore the threat and leave the question for the next generation to struggle with, or we can look for answers in our own lives and in our own organisations. To my mind, professional accountants and ACCA accountants in particular are well placed to make a real contribution to sustainable business, because a respect for ethics and an insistence on seeing the big picture is built into our philosophy of doing business. ACCA is the professional body that was founded to promote public good, and we remain true to that goal that was framed as long ago as 1904. We of course face enormous challenges, but I'm optimistic that we can all play a part in finding answers. A big question for all of us at this event is simply this: what can we do? What is our role as professional accountants in creating a more ethical and sustainable world? I have said earlier, accountants are perfectly placed to champion ethics and sustainability, and that's true. How we make our contribution extends far beyond the business as usual concerns of the traditional accountant. We're not just talking about integrated reporting and including environmental and social measures in annual statements, although that is a vital element of it. It's about much more than adding a few splashes of green to a reporting framework. We're talking about new industries. It's about how we build economic systems that protect health services, tackle inequality, and promote public good. It's about the part our profession can play in transforming economies, influencing businesses which are more environmentally aware, more regenerative, truly social entities which make a positive impact in the world. As you all know, ACCA is deeply committed to playing its part in promoting the crucial importance of ethics and sustainability in business. I'm proud that we have a long-standing commitment to promoting the highest ethical and professional standards, building trust and promoting public value. They are all built into our qualification and professional development. I'm proud of our commitment in developing the profession the world needs, notably in this region, across the Middle East and Asia. We continue to grow and our reputation and reach increases year on year, and we play our part in helping countries' economies prosper in a sustainable manner. And I'm proud of our professional insights research and recommendations on sustainability, which in the past 2 months alone has seen us lead the debate with our reports. Climate action and the accountancy profession, building a sustainable future. Professional accountants at the heart of sustainable organisations, and climate change risk-related disclosures in extractive companies, a follow-up report. We must remember every day in all that we do that even COVID-19 is a minor disruptor compared to the long-term effects of climate change. People know that we need to improve resilience. We feel more than ever how interconnected our world is and how a local shop goes around the world. Sustainability used to be an abstract concept. COVID-19 has brought it to every doorstep and business as usual is gone. Climate change is no longer theoretical. We can see it on news bulletins every day with more drought, more wildfires, more hurricanes, more floods ravaging the earth. Across much of the world, more and more frequently, we can see the disruption in nature and the climate simply by looking out of the window. This is why every business and every accountant must do what they can. A big part of that is in promoting a broader view of what success means and also ask what value means. Risk used to be simple. If you risked money, invested money, success was measured by the scale of the profit you lost or made or lost. Not anymore. The risk profile of a business must widen to include natural risk and human and social risk. And capital markets must engage with this agenda if they're to remain relevant and a part of the solution rather than cause of climate catastrophe. I think that this is already happening. Capital markets are beginning to pay attention to the climate risk of companies. We see it everywhere, including at the biggest companies. The job of accountants is to reinforce that agenda every day, to make sure that climate risk and the public good are front and centre in every business strategy and every investment decision. That's how we will make a difference in creating a more ethical and sustainable world. Thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thanks to Helen for connecting the dots so beautifully. Now, our second keynote speaker, Margaret Sumpling, President and Chief Executive, CFA Institute, will talk about ethics and profession. Over to you, Axel.
Thank Thank you for having me, albeit virtually. I'm Marg Franklin, President and CEO of CFA Institute. CFA Institute's mission is to lead the investment profession globally by promoting the highest standards of ethics, education, and professional excellence for the ultimate benefit of society. I am particularly inspired by the words of our mission for the ultimate benefit of society. We're at a moment in time where investors are seeking a more purposeful approach and are recognizing the importance of finance and investment in the context of society as a whole. I know that the last year and a half has challenged us all, both personally and professionally. What we see more and more these days, in a trend clearly hastened by the economic impact of the pandemic, is that generating a profit is increasingly seen as not enough. Many investors and employees demand a more holistic perspective. Some see it as defining a social license to operate, with companies integrating their wider purpose with their profit motivations. We call this purposeful capitalism. We explored purposeful capitalism in our future state of the investment profession study. We described an evolution wherein the investment industry becomes more professional, ethical, and client-centric. And we discussed how organizations may evolve with greater focus placed on transforming their own cultures and integrating environmental, social, and governance factors. We must be ready to explain our own company's societal impact to our staffs, stakeholders, and the communities in which we operate. And we must be well trained to answer those very questions when posed by investors. I personally have never felt more energized to communicate CFA Institute's mission and vision, galvanizing our staff, members, and constituents around the world to rally around our cause. So to all of you here today, I encourage you to lead on the notion of mission and purpose too. Push your companies to define their mission. You'll all be better for it. Our industry will help rebuild the global economy. We play an essential function when it comes to providing capital to fuel economic growth and to help achieve financial security for individuals. It is the time for investment managers to demonstrate their expertise when it comes to stewardship, if their clients so requested. Fiduciary duty remains integral to our work as investment management professionals, and this is necessary now more than ever. We must be led by our clients and be educated and prepared to respond to their investing objectives. As you well know, interest in ESG products continues to soar. Today's savvy investor demands ESG analysis as part of the fundamental work of investing. So there's simply no debate in my mind. ESG analysis equates to fundamental analysis, and properly constructed ESG products meet a definitive investor need. CFA Institute stands at the forefront of efforts in sustainable finance and ESG, launching initiatives to ensure our members and those in the industry at large are well prepared to tackle ESG investing considerations. This includes our new certificate in ESG investing, the first of its kind to be offered around the globe. This education program represents a new global qualification for ESG and investment management, aiming to strengthen market integrity by delivering the benchmark knowledge and skills required by investment professionals to integrate environmental, social, and governance factors into the investment process. We also will be releasing the first edition of the voluntary global CFA Institute ESG disclosure standards for investment products in early November, another step towards ensuring transparency and safeguarding trust in our industry. The purpose of the standards is to provide greater transparency and consistency in ESG-related disclosures, resulting in clearer communication regarding the ESG-related features of investment products. And while voluntary product-level ESG disclosure standards exist for some types of products and regulations exist in some regions, there is currently no truly global standard that can help harmonize the efforts undertaken thus far. We believe the standards will fill that gap for investors. Thank you again for affording me this opportunity to address you today. I'm confident you'll leave today's event feeling informed and inspired, and thanks again for your unwavering support. Be well, everyone.
thank you, Margaret, for your very insightful and holistic view on the ethics of the profession. Now, for today's closing session, ACCA have chosen the most important topic for the sustainability and the profession as well. That is climate action. Climate change is a global emergency. It's the buzzword. It's threatening crops, water supplies, infrastructure, livelihoods. It's damaging the broader economy and company bottom lines and overall sustainability. Now, we are not even talking about future. My 7-year-old daughter, trust me, she is no Greta Thunberg, but she asked me once, Mom, are we ruining the sea and the nature? And I couldn't say no. And it is obvious that climate action has to be the greatest thing humankind can look into to create a better future for the next generation. And today's panel will discuss how the climate action and the finance and accountancy profession connect at a deeper level. Now, it is time to introduce you to the lead panel for today. With us, we have our moderator, Mr. Arif Masood Mirza, FCCA, a respected and a versatile leader with specialist knowledge and experience of the international accounting profession, currently leading the policy agenda for ACCA across the Middle East and South Asia region. And he is also currently a member of the advisory committee and a multi-stakeholder steering committee for the GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, South Asia. And then we have Pyumi Sumana Sekara, Principal Family Business, Board Governance, Climate Change and Sustainability Services, Global Assurance for KPMG's member firm in Sri Lanka, and counts over 15 years of experience in audit services and advisory services in various industries, globally and locally. Then we have William Tomei, CFA, Regional Head of Middle East and North Africa, MENA for CFA Institute. William advocates for the highest standards of practice and ethics in the investment management industry, the promotion of financial market integrity and transparency among regional policymakers and regulators. He brings a wealth of experience in building a presence in new markets, in local knowledge, and a strong entrepreneurial spirit. In the panel, we have Ziaul Mustafa, FCMA, President, ICMA Pakistan. He has exposure of over 20 years in corporate and public sector organizations, during which period he remained associated in various segments of economy, like manufacturing, construction services, banking, and education. Presently, he is serving as CFO and Business Administrator of Pakistan Expo Centers Private Limited. Then we have Nazal Riyasat ACCA, CEO IBC Power Limited, who started his own management consultancy company and now oversees operational management of one of the largest privately owned dredging companies in South Asia, playing an active role in the development of Bangladesh by implementing large-scale marine and riverine infrastructure development projects. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Umar Zahir Mir, FCCA. Umar, he is a renowned taxation and economics expert. He is currently serving as a managing partner at Millennium Law and Corporate Company and on the boards of several corporates and think tanks. He is highly associated with ACCA and contributes as a member of ACCA's Global Tax Forum, International Assembly, Editorial Board, MESA Policy Insights, PE Forum, Mentoring Forum, and also sits as the chair of the Member Networking Panel, Taxation Committee, and ACCA LCCI Tax Clinic of ACCA in Pakistan. So you can see this is a really high profile, and we can profile forum, and we can look forward to a really deep dive into the climate action. And over to you, Mr. Arif Masood Mirza.
Great. Thank you very much, Proma, for the introductions, and just want to welcome the panel. I think it's important from the start to say that it's a huge sort of canvas, and we are going to be concentrating on purely, the climate actions that companies are taking, strategizing over, and we won't really dive into the the social and governance aspects. Let me first of all say that the science is overwhelming now in terms of global warming and climate change. So we're not going to have any doubts about the scientific findings. And I think being a resident of the region, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it's Pakistan or the Middle East, I think we've all faced the climate change. We're experiencing floods, we're experiencing extremely hot, dry weather, we're experiencing heavier monsoons as well. So, there are extremities that we're all facing. And a lot of this now, the science is telling us, has been created by industry, the products and services that we rely upon and for which we work. So I think, that there's a huge responsibility on us to start adapting and mitigating our business operations in order to, counter global warming or sort of reverse it or, help to manage it. So we're going to try and remain fairly focused. Let's not, get into areas where we don't want to focus on. So first of all, let me ask you, Zia, because you are at the moment leading an accounting body, the ICMA, what do you think in terms of the skills that accountants and finance professionals need to develop in order to play a role in sort of managing climate action within organizations? So what's happening globally in terms of the international standards of managing climate action from a financial point of view and from a reporting point of view? And how important is it going to be for financial professionals to remain sort of future-proof?
Thank you, Mr. Arif. First of all, I would like to appreciate ACCA for organizing this Global Ethics Day with the theme to highlight the importance of environmental impacts on the economy and on the individuals. So this is a great theme, and I must appreciate the team of ACCA for choosing this topic. As you said, that industrializations, transform the society, and we have moved from agrarian to manufacturing, and this is, for the benefit of the society that we are moving towards the industrial economy. But on the other hand, you have rightly said that industrialization have some negative, externalities which impact the life of a common people and the life of everyone on this planet. And this is just due to the key issues which I would like to highlight before going into the role of the professional accounting organization, that what we are facing with this environmental impact, the pollution due to this industrialization, we are facing this pollution, we are facing the global warming, we are facing the issues of waste disposal of the industry, we are facing the issues of ocean acidification, cutting of trees, ozone layer depletion. This is one of the issue. Loss of biodiversity and overpopulation is also the issue. These all factors are impacting the environment. These all factors, and likewise the businesses and the industry, they are contributing in it as an industry and the manufacturing concern. And in order to be sustainable in the market, and in order to be work for the better world where human can maintain a life in a way that it will not impact on their health or on their futures, we have to highlight these issues how we can. If we talk about the accountants, our responsibility is, because the accountants are known for the people or the professional, those who are safeguarding the public interest. We are watching the public interest in terms of financial management, in terms of wealth of shareholders, and other disclosures as well, which includes the non-financial disclosures as well. So in my opinion, the professional accounting organizations should include the importance of this environmental impact in their curriculum, and we must disclose all those factors which are affecting the environment. How our industry is affecting this, what should be the treatments, what are the financial impacts of climate issues, what are the we have to ensure the compliance with the sustainability related reporting through standards set by international sustainability standard boards. So these things we need to educate to the students and to the members of the professional accounting organization, and we have to make the part of these disclosures of the annual reports of any organizations. So disclose with respect to organization governance around climate related risk and opportunities. This must be the part of our disclosures. So if I talk about the ICMA, ICMA is also organizing this global ethics day with different themes, but this is a very important theme, how environment is impacting, because a person starts its day from the by saying the weather forecast. How is the weather right now? So likewise, every day is you are planning with this weather forecast. What will be the environment? Today is rainy. Today is sunny, or what is the forecast? So likewise, we have to safeguard the public interest by ensuring the a better environment, by ensuring that we must have a clean drinking waters, whether the public has or not have, and how we can improve the quality of the soil, because the industrializations are affecting reducing the quality of the soil as well. These are industries are releases unwanted toxins into the air, which is impacting the overall environment. So as an accounting professional, you are basically looking the financial matters of the organization, and financial matters. When we are talking about the financial matters, we are always talking about the sustainability, how it could be sustainable. If the environment, if your land is not sustainable, if your landscape, and if the water is not available, if the natural resources are going towards depletion, then the survival of any business organization will be at question mark. So in my opinion, this is a very right topic, and rightly you people address this, that professional accounting organizations should highlight this issue, and we have to make this this disclosure to be the part of our annual reports, that how organization have the commitments for the climate change, what are the targets for the climate, to address the climate changes, and what are the financial impacts of the climate change, and how we have to disclose all such things to the stakeholders at large. So This is what we can do at the platform of POs, and we can go through the CPD's program for the benefit of the financial professionals and society at large.
Great, thanks a lot, Zia, in terms of just articulating what the role of the professional accountancy organizations are. I think it's a good segue for me to bring in Pumi, because a number of things you mentioned there. You mentioned disclosures, you mentioned compliance, you mentioned targets and financial matters. Pumi, you're with KPMG in Sri Lanka. A lot of your clients are probably looking at all those aspects in terms of sustainability reporting. They're looking at disclosures. They want to disclose more to their investors, their stakeholders. But at the moment, we know that within South Asia, there's no mandatory requirement for these disclosures. Yeah, a lot of the capital markets here don't really require sustainability reports. They don't require ESG reports. What do you think your clients are gaining as a competitive advantage by adopting climate action and reporting on climate action?
Okay, great question, actually, Arif. So let's look at it this way. Yes, the investors are asking for it. So there's a few companies who started because the investors were asking for it. Some of them wanted to attract investors, therefore they started on it. Let's look at it from another perspective. Customers. Well, now there are EU regulations coming by, and that is something that's sort of motivating companies to think about ESG as a strategy, and therefore they're starting with reporting, because if you measure it, you monitor it, and therefore you could see the impact to business. So it's a good starting point. So you've got a lot of them starting with GRI, IR. And I think a good example of somebody that actually started on this journey 10 years ago, and we were actually part of this, and this is just one example, is how because they measured it and they monitored it, it influenced the business strategy. And when it came to COVID and when it came to economic downturns, they were still ahead of the game, and they were still, I would say, making money, because that's a requirement as well. And they were reaching out to customers, because the integrated thinking that came out of measuring, monitoring capitals other than financial capital influenced them to change their business. They went into more digitalization, they focused on different products. And I must say, they were the ones that were thriving. Another perspective is also because we do have a lot of, say, garment industry companies, we have a lot of exporters. So even IT sector, for example, they're all motivated because their customers are asking for it. The world is asking for it. And even if you look at SMEs, some of them are really focusing on the niche where they're directly sending goods out to consumers who are focused on sustainable products. So for them, a starting point is measuring. But if it comes to disclosures, we also have motivation coming out of, reporting awards, which and different competitions. Even ACCA sort of encouraged it, and that's been a good starting point as well. Even though it started off as a race to report and to look good, it's influenced businesses the right way. So I'm not saying it's all bad, but it's a great initiative, and it's helped businesses in the process. We do have a voluntary code that the SEC and CSE have sort of mandated, and that's encouraged people. We've got institutes like ACCA, CA Sri Lanka, who talk about it, who encourage it, who have programs around it. So it sort of influenced the CFOs to be the change makers. Maybe not as much as we would want them to be, but I can see it gathering momentum a lot more now than before. So there's various motivations, and it's definitely stakeholder driven at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, there are voluntary sort of disclosures required at the moment, but, and also, that those are sort of maybe seen as mandated. But I think in South Asia, we're a little bit slow out of the blocks in terms of what we mandate and what we don't mandate. So I think there's the regulators here get a lot of pushback from industry to not mandate and just see how things sort of happen, and then maybe delay that sort of mandate later on. But the first thing you said was investors. So let me bring in William, because William is in financial services. So they are providing debt capital, they're providing maybe equity as well. So William, in terms of this, thinking about climate action and most of the actions that we require in order to stop climate change at an organizational level requires investment. What are you seeing in terms of the new forms of investments and capital available to companies to sort of combat climate as it affects their organizations? So in terms of green bonds, green finance, etc., what are you seeing, and what are the new types of metrics that you are looking for apart from the financial return?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, I would love to thank ACCA and all the professional bodies who allowed me to be on this, invited me to be on this panel. And thanks for a great question. Allow me to shock the audience a little bit with few numbers, because we're talking about finance, and finance is all about numbers. Net present value costs of climate change as of today, the net present value, US $4.2 trillion. Okay. So it's not, I woke up and I decided I want to do something good for nature. And somebody shared earlier something on social media that I should take care of my body, my brain, and my planet. It's not utopia. The second set of numbers I would like to throw on the audience is the cost of adapting to climate change in developing countries, $500 billion per year by 2050. This is not something we should neglect or live without. And even the US administration, at the time where Trump was a president, climate change is expected to cause growing losses to American infrastructure and property and impede the rate of economic growth over this century. This is someone who worked under President Trump, who issued that after a long series of research that was given to the Congress. I'll stop here by shocking the audience, and I'll go to some more positive numbers. $31 trillion of sustainable assets or green assets have been invested so far. So the money is there. How do we direct it? So we have in Europe $14 trillion invested in sustainable finance. In the US, $12 trillion. So the US is not that far behind Europe, even though Europe claims to be the champion of sustainable investments. So we see that the private sector, and my colleagues on this panel already mentioned it, that the private sector is taking care of that global issue and thinking about the 7-year-old child that Prana mentioned earlier. The private money is going there. Now, who's pushing more? Pension funds. And I was lucky to be in Dubai 2 days ago and listening to the Minister of Pensions from the UK, United Kingdom. And I was surprised that how much the government in the United Kingdom is doing around transparency and ESG, and really putting the money of the private sector and the public sector where the mouth is. So pension funds are mainly in Europe pushing for that amount of money to be invested in renewable projects, in renewable companies. And this is leading to green bonds and green loans and ESG funds. So hope is coming from the fact that your retirement money in developed countries is going into sustainable finance, into green finance. Now, of course, there are ways of investing this money by using sometimes negative screening or ESG integration or restricting funding to fossil fuel. One of the most successful actions for the last 10 years has been, do you recall that 20 years ago we had funds investing in against the vice funds and into something that healthy and or having actions against cigarette, etc., or alcohol. Now we have these funds attacking fossil fuel investments and depriving the fossil fuel sector from funding. $10 trillion went into this kind of investing away from fossil fuel or limiting the impact of fossil fuel investing. So this is where I see the hope coming from, is the money is going where the mouth is. Now, what do we recommend in terms of for the investors, or at least for the portfolio managers who are handed this green money or sustainable money to be invested? First of all, we invite the profession to put a price tag on carbon. So we call policymakers to ensure that regulatory frameworks for carbon markets are designed to deliver transparency, liquidity, ease of access for global market participants, and similar standards across jurisdiction in order to underpin robust and reliable carbon pricing. We also invite and recommend investment professionals to account for carbon prices when they are drawing their expectations on climate risk analysis. We also salute the work that has been done by Sustainable Accounting Standards Board and the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. They are addressing the materiality of climate-related risk, and they are working on the awareness of the industry when it comes to really limiting the damage of climate-related risks. Now, for the investors, we really encourage investors to engage with issuers of green bonds, green loans, or equities to ensure that climate data, scenario analysis, and related disclosures are really sufficiently studied to support robust climate risk analysis in the investment process. So we want the investment processes to account for this before we land an investment in a portfolio for a client. Let me finish on education. You really want to provide clients with the climate-related analysis they deserve before they make any decision to invest with you or to invest in an equity or in a bond that you're recommending. So education is very important within our profession, especially to raise the awareness within our clients on climate-related analysis and risks. Thank you.
Thanks, William. I think, in terms of what you said about pension funds, asset owners and asset managers really leading the way on this. I mean, I read somewhere that there's going to be a potential $50 trillion diverted towards ESG investments, by 2030. So it does very much look as if, it's a sector that's going to grow. Let me bring in Munazil Riasat from Bangladesh. Now, Munazil, you work in a very interesting sector. It's going to be very difficult for me to sort of say which industry you belong to, but your organization is involved in dredging waterways, and you told me there's about 400 plus waterways across Bangladesh. It's a network of waterways. You're involved in making it more navigable by taking silt out of the rivers and rehabilitating these rivers. It's a very important conservation project work you're in, but also a very important developmental work. But I know you've also got views in terms of, the ethical dilemmas of all this. And I think we should make the discussion more practical and more sort of regional, because all these measures may have an impact on economic growth. They may delay economic growth, or they may speed it up. The formula is that if we divert long-term funds to sort of environmental investments, will it in fact reduce economic growth in the short term or the medium term, in which case, our populations may suffer economically. Nazir, tell us a little bit about the work you're doing, and tell me, your views in terms of striking a balance between managing climate action and also delivering economic growth as well.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Arif, and hello and good evening to everyone joining in. And my thanks to ACCA and MESA for inviting me to today's discussion on climate action in the profession. And can I just say that as a member, it's extremely heartening to see ACCA taking a leadership role in bringing awareness to the crucial issue of climate change by bringing it to the forefront of its agenda. I believe it's vital for everyone to recognize that the urgent actions are required to, unless urgent actions are taken, the impact of climate change is going to have profound implications for our way of living in the coming decades. And now, thankfully, governments around the world have been acting with growing urgency to avert this crisis by enacting legislation to curb emissions with measures like levying carbon tax and implementing emission trading systems with varying degrees of success. So to answer your question, in terms of the economic push and pull of balancing ESG requirements with, driving the economy forward, what Bangladesh has been doing is investing in driving the infrastructure that is needed to build a climate resilient society. We have invested in areas like building a new power plant, a nuclear power plant in Bangladesh, which is going to divert our energy source from mainly carbon-based, coal-based power generation to nuclear, which is a cleaner fuel, and that will reduce our carbon footprint. Bangladesh possesses over 700 kilometers of coastline with an exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles. As the government looks to unlock the full potential of its oceanic corridor, by prioritizing sectors for development in the blue economy, which includes tourism, renewable energy, aquaculture, and maritime sector. My company, IBC Power Limited's activities are aligned with these objectives as we look to support the government with its development plans through the implementation of river channel, port dredging, and other river training initiatives. And we take great pride in the fact that we've been able to make significant contributions in river management initiatives undertaken by the government, having successfully completed 6 major projects, dredging over 38 million cubic meters of fill to date. In doing so, we have contributed to the addition of 2,300 kilometers of reclaimed navigation routes, increased water retention capacity of rivers and project areas, leading to the reduction of seasonal flooding and the restoration of river biodiversity. This has rescued entire communities from the misery of perennial flooding and the economic deprivation that comes with it. IBC Power Limited, along with its partner organizations, are currently engaged in 12 river training projects with a requirement to dredge over 36 million cubic meters to date. And in doing so, we hope to increase the navigability of our rivers and support the trade that will be facilitated through the 700 river network that exists in our country. I think that's a very essential economic development that needs to be made, as well as protecting our population from becoming climate refugees, as they do on a regular basis even today. Hundreds and thousands of people become displaced due to the climate, due to flooding, perennial flooding that occurs every year, especially in the coastal areas of our country. Our main priority is to continue delivering the projects that are entrusted in our care and build on our past successes. And by doing so, we wish to assist the government in its endeavor in climate adaptation and the development of Bangladesh, the blue economy. And I think that would go a long way in terms of supporting our transition into the developed part of the world. I think the push and pull that comes into the equation is where our company, being a dredging company, is heavily invested in using fossil fuels to conduct our operation. And we are looking at measures to mitigate this. We're working with international partners like Damen and IHC, who have innovative marine solutions to reduce emissions and also to maybe transition to cleaner fuels like natural gas and even electricity when possible. So in terms of supporting the government, our endeavors are towards the mitigation aspect mostly, but we are looking to developing our company in a way that we can be responsive to the incoming legislation so that we are ahead of any challenges that we may face in that area. I think the main point that I want to make is developing countries like ours, which are most vulnerable to climate change, have been given the short end of the stick, really, by being imposed new regulations when they come about, if they do come about. Because I think as countries which have the least accumulated carbon debt, we do especially countries who have high carbon emissions, have an ethical responsibility to support the transition of low emitting countries into a renewable society. Because without generation of power, without powering industries, it's impossible for countries like ours to alleviate poverty and transform into a developed society.
Yeah, thanks, Munazil. I think you're quite right. I think, whatever the requirements of the Paris agreements are, a lot of the responsibility falls on the G7 in terms of, delivering on reducing their carbon footprint. I think there's always a dilemma for countries like ours in this region, to take the millions of people out of poverty. And the only way we can do that is through economic growth. And economic growth is a factor of using cheaper energy. And at the moment, the non-carbon fuels are very expensive and very long-term. So I think it is a real ethical dilemma that we're faced with. It's not just about, climate action. There is an ethical dilemma in all of this. Let me turn to Umar. Umar, in terms of the taxation models that we have across the region, they're mainly based upon, direct taxes, whereby we tax individuals' incomes through payroll, etc. There's very little in terms of the polluter pays concept, where we identify enterprises and industry in terms of how they're polluting our nations and then taxing them more. Do you see a shift towards penalizing companies for polluting? So do you see a growth in carbon taxes in the region?
Thank you, Arif. First of all, I would like to thank and both congratulate ACCA MESA for organizing this topical panel discussion, a high-level one for that, and for having me here too. A very relevant question, Arif. I'll begin by sharing a key number with our audience. You were talking about fuel, and that is a critical factor. So fossil fuels are currently the main driver of the climate change, and they account for 89% of all CO2 emissions and 68% of GHG emissions. Now, the issue with our region is that our economies and countries in this region are developing economies. And you have rightly pointed out that there is a balance to be maintained in terms of the impact on the climate, as well as the goal of getting people out of poverty, of development, of taking the economies forward. Now, we do know that there have been global efforts, there has been Paris Accords, SDGs, etc. But without naming anyone, we are also aware that some of the larger economies, unfortunately, have not been very strong about these goals. And some of them have even been trying to get the targets pushed down. So that does have an impact. Before I share further details, let me share one specific incident. So about 2-3 years back, ACCA started a drive across the globe focused on green taxes, tax as a force for good. And you would remember that we had an event in Islamabad too, where Femke Grutes and Yente Chen were also involved. And we had some parliamentarians as well. So ACCA was taking that forward, championing this agenda with the policymakers as well. And we had very fruitful discussions, and formally it was wonderful. But if I be frank with our audience here, I'm sure you would have remembered that over the food, when we were having informal discussion, those very policymakers pointed out that, look, all of this is good. And yes, we are concerned about the impact on the environment. But have a look, the economies who are actually championing this agenda are developed economies. They are in a position to do away, for example, with coal and other cheaper mediums of energy, etc., which are high polluters. But for us to do that, and that too without any global initiative and effort, puts us in a very difficult situation. We are already developing, we are already facing resource constraint. And if we are to do that, perhaps that's not very practical. Obviously, no one was going to say that formally. Nobody said that on the conference. But these are the kind of discussions that we have to bring forward to actually try to find the solutions. The taxation models you have rightly pointed out focuses more on the income side, the businesses, the salaries, especially in our region. The concept of green taxes and carbon emission trading is lesser in our region. It is gaining more momentum in the developed economies, even in China. I would class that as a almost developed economy now, in fact, a developed economy. But if we talk about region, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, even India for matter, you won't find much in terms of green taxes. However, because of the growing impetus in the region on environment, because of increased awareness and efforts like today, institution like ACCA leading the agenda, there is an increased awareness. But at the moment, it is actually uh, getting itself more manifested in other forms. For example, people are more inspired to plant more trees. People are more inspired to focus on industries like Monazil, where they are trying to reduce the pollution, etc. For the moment, I think it will take some time. Obviously, there will be a time that green taxes would be here, but a lot of things need to be worked out. Even if we talk about the countries where emissions trading are there, how is it working? I mean, the concept is that the countries or the businesses that are net polluters pay a cost, and those who have the green points, who are not polluters or less polluters, can benefit economically so that the very issue that I pointed out can be addressed. But the first issue for that is that there is no uniform global platform for that. Even the countries that are doing, they are doing arbitrary valuations. So for example, if you are talking about China's emission trading, that is altogether on a different level. If you talk about the European emissions trading, that is on a different level. So unless the very first stage would be, in my opinion, to address the biggest detraction of green taxes, which is the numerous and large information cost in setting and changing the taxes, particularly in assigning monetary valuation to the damage caused by the toxic waste in terms of human health, lost businesses, and other costs. So while this is an important agenda, I believe we need to have concerted global efforts. We need to have all the countries coming together, taking it as a uniform global agenda, UN perhaps leading the charge, and obviously institutions like ACCA actually championing the agenda like they are doing in collaboration with other institutions like ACCA has done today. And it would still require a lot of effort and lobbying. It is not going to happen over time, but it will happen. How long will it take will depend on how effectively we are able to come together as a global community to address the rational issues and resource limitations of those countries who are in a lesser fortunate situation.
Thanks so much for that. I can see Munazil has got his hand up. Munazil, you wanna come back into a point on that?
Yeah, I'd just like to chime in on what Zahir Bhai was saying. There is no global unified carbon price standard. And I think that is one of the biggest impediments to implementing any kind of uniform distribution of, say, the resources that are required, that are generated from these carbon polluting industries. So, and I've seen in recent news reports that business leaders have been pushing for a unified global carbon standard so that these measures can actually have a meaningful effect rather than just an arbitrary number. For example, the average carbon price around the world is, I think, somewhere around $3, and which is insignificant. It makes no difference to polluting industries at that rate. $3 per ton, I think, per 1,000 tons of emissions. So, and in Europe, the most advanced of these regions, they're charging at around $40 per ton of carbon emissions. So, which is also not enough to actually motivate polluting companies to change their business model completely. So I think carbon needs to be priced at a high enough level, and it needs to be globalized in order for all the countries to be able to impose through their legislative measures and sort of generate the kind of funds that are required and act as a deterrent to these polluting industries to shift from heavy emission industries to renewable and low emission ones.
Thanks for that, Mazama. Let me just turn to Pumi and William. I think a similar a question to both of you is when you're engaging with your clients, and you have clients in terms of providing business advisory services, Pumi, William, you have clients in terms of borrowers. Who at the client are you engaging with? Who's the best person to engage with on these matters? You know, is it the CFO? Is it the chief operating officer? Is it the chief risk officer? Who owns this agenda within the organizations? Perhaps Pumi, you first, and then you, William.
So I would say mostly, let's put it this way, there's different organizations with different responsibilities. So we do have CFOs who are conversing with us, and that's brilliant. But we also have CEOs and COOs, and if they do have a risk officer, they'll have risk officers who are talking to us about it. And if you've got a CSO in terms of sustainability, you'll have them championing the conversation. So it's good to know that at least there's somebody championing it. And just to echo on and just to give a different perspective to the whole great carbon debate, right? Taxes are good. Yes, we want a unified standard. Yes, the world is sort of working on it, but do we wait for it? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves as businesses, as CFOs who are part of businesses. When you wait for things and you wait for the mainstreaming, would you lose an advantage? You've got an asset that you're waiting to create. You've got a competitive advantage that you're waiting to create. So is this something that you can do now? Because is it just climate change, or is it code red right now? Will there be business without looking at a more sustainable world? Would your business be attractive if you're not looking at it from a more sustainable perspective? Yes, there's a lot that's in the works. We know there's unified standards that are coming together. There's organizations that are coming together. Yes, we've got an ISSB. It's going to come and impact our financials. We've got TCFD here already. So yes, from a carbon perspective, I think carbon tax is a real debate as well. But whilst we have individuals looking at it within organizations, I think it's our role as accountancy professionals who have I would say the historical information as the lag indicators, but we've got, lead indicators, which is what William mentioned earlier. We've got share prices crashing. You've got share indexes crashing. If you're a tail end of the ESG spectrum, you've got share prices crashing over 95%, which is a good enough indicator to say whether you're private or public, it's impacting your business. Consumers are looking at it differently. And yes, you've got large investor groups and funds that are really, pushing for it. And maybe it's an advantage for us developing countries as well, because maybe it's time that we can attract more investors into the country if we're sort of focusing on the green, right? And there's no green without the blue. So there's the blue that we can focus on, because if we've got, water spaces that we have access to, that's a good way to look at it. Maybe we can be carbon sinks, that's another way to make money. So there's lots of opportunity out there. And if there's at least one person in the organization that's championing the conversation and bringing it up to the board, and even better if you've got a board member, which is generally rare, but we've got some passionate millennials that are stepping up. So I think there's hope, and we need to do this together, because I think now is not the time to sit and sort of wait for things to happen, but to sort of action, at least in some way. Just to put that point across.
Yeah, and I think the passionate millennials is a very important point, because, they're going to sort of vote with their money, going into green organizations versus non-green organizations. William, again, when you are, providing finances and capital to organizations, who are you most likely to engage with in terms of, who's the most responsible sort of C-suite level person that you want to engage with in order to get feedback on climate action, climate strategy of a company?
Just a slight footnote. I'm no longer doing that, because at the Institute, I'm just doing the ambassadorial role of representing the Institute. But I spent 22 years in the asset management industry. And I can tell you that 10 years ago, we used to visit asset owners in this part of the world to suggest investment solutions. I won't tell you with which employer I was, but from your CV you can guess. We used to have one slide on ESG in the annexes at the end. It was like a joker. Whenever we've been like in the corner because we have a question, do you use ESG in your financial or your investment process? And we would go into the annexes, try to find slide 54 or 56 and bring it to the front and say, yeah, of course we're aware of ESG, because we didn't want to lie. We used to say we are aware of ESG. Now, if you go into any RFP, especially in this part of the world, and if you're doing the RFP on behalf of a European client, I can guarantee you that you will not make it to the final stages of the RFP if you did not fill the famous 7 pages on ESG. Now, if you have ESG as part of your investment process, you really go into a thorough kind of filling. But if you don't have ESG in your investment process, you need to explain within 10 pages why you don't have it. So you're stuck in your own game, which is why on earth you did not invest in this, knowing it's happening around you. It's not a fashion, it's not a trend, it's a prerequisite. And I like the fact, Arif, that you asked about millennials, because millennials want to go and vote in the AGMs. They want to buy one share and go and vote. If you don't give them this, they will sell the share. They're not interested. Now, you asked me about non-millennials, the baby boomers. They are pushing through big pension fund that I mentioned earlier. And allow me to give an example about a great pension fund called Norges in Norway. And another one is APT in Holland, in the Netherlands. These two pension funds sent this part of the world asset managers a while ago some papers to fill about what they're doing on sustainability, ESG, etc. Now, lots of asset managers neglected that paper, saying it's not a due diligence. It's not going to affect our AM. Well, it did. Because 12 months later, they kept the money with the asset managers who did an effort to produce the paper and say we're ESG compliant or not yet or working on it. And asset managers who took it lightly lost their mandates. And Norges is an oil producing country, right? Norway. But their pension fund doesn't want to invest in polluting companies, doesn't want to invest in any company that doesn't respect the E, the S, and the G. And I know we're focusing on the E today, but why would you neglect the S and the G in an investment process? Because this is a risk down the line that you're buying today. Why would you neglect some lawsuits because you're polluting the river next door? Why would you neglect a lawsuit because your own employees will leave you because you no longer have a culture in your organization? Why would you neglect a future lawsuit on employing people below the age in developing countries to produce nice products for the high consumers in Europe? So we are getting towards this society where I want to consume to keep this planet green. I want to consume to keep the employers of that super duper brand happy to go to work and have a culture, and they are healthy. Health means productivity for your employees, so you shouldn't neglect it. So again, we rely on these leaders by example from the Norway, from Holland, and I'm sorry to give them so much publicity, but they started to invest in ESG when we were trying to hide a slide at the end of the deck. So asset owners will lead and will give the tone going forward. And asset owners means you and I, my and your retirement, my and your savings in a pension fund, in a mutual fund, in a ACCA, or any kind of vehicle, investment vehicle.
Yeah, thanks for that, William. I think, when you mention asset owners, obviously these are, in the future, they're going to be beneficiaries who are very young today, and they will influence the behavior of asset managers and trustees to do the right thing for them. Years ago, I read, the CalPERS, the Californian Pension Fund responsible for public sector pensions, they used to have an investable list of companies and a non-investable list, and a lot of countries in our part of the world don't even feature on both the lists, yeah, because the governance is so poor here that we don't even feature on, both those lists. So we're going to have a hard time to get on the non-investable list. These are companies they could target in the future, but don't currently do, and then to get them on the investable list. I know Umar he's got his hand up, he wants to say something. Umar, can you also at the same time, when you give your comments, also reflects upon, if there are going to be, if carbon emissions trading and carbon permits are also a mechanism to raise revenue for our governments, what's stopping us at the moment from going down that track?
Great. So what I wanted to share, you have already partially touched on that, Arif. I was listening to William very intently, and I agree to almost what he has said. Only the difference is what you pointed out, that in our part of the world, the things are different. I mean, all these things are really good. The pensions, institutional investors, having the green consideration, and having spent a considerable part of my life in Europe, I'm aware that's very much a fact that William was pointing out. But the problem is the inequity that I was pointing out to before, that all these institutional investors, all these fundings are mostly going to go in the companies and the corporates and in the institution in those regions. So we come back to the square one in terms of inequity, which you have also pointed out that because we have serious challenges in terms of the regulations as well as the effectiveness, or if I be frank, the issues of less governance, corruption, etc., all those problems that we know in our part of the world, because of which most of our corporates and institutions don't even feature on the list, which will be a consideration for the future. So that was very well covered by you. Before answering your question, if I could just take 2 to 3 minutes, um, I just wanted to make a point about the taxation system, that considering the challenges our societies are facing today, indeed, it is a time to rebalance, but we have already pointed out the reluctance and all. So ACCA did a detailed study and proposed 5 steps to the government and businesses to undertake. And the reason being that we are aware that rebalancing our tax system is not easy, because tax policy is driven by politics, and that is normally oriented towards a short-term focus, not a long-term focus. And then we know how important lobbies is, and industries with an interest in keeping the status quo often has a stronger voice and financial muscle than other groups who are lobbying for the green taxes and etc. And frankly, nobody likes to pay for something that was previously free of charge. It is really hard to convince people to do that. And last but not the least, there's the challenge that how should we coordinate the tax reform internationally, as shifting financial incentives will definitely also shift the trade patterns, not just in our region, but globally. So I'll just very quickly point out the 5 proposals for government, and because the time is short, I'll fall, as you said, Arif, we can put a price on pollution. We can at least do away with the subsidies that government is providing in our part of the world. And definitely that is an additional cost to the governments and exchequer. So a case can be built for that. And then we can work on pricing carbon emissions. The second proposal, which ACCA put out, was that use the tax revenues to reduce the taxes on labor and expand social protection. How? In particular, by using the taxes that we can raise by carbon emissions to lower the taxes on labor and income. In that way, we can help incentivize the people towards the pricing of the natural resources, which can be a real challenge otherwise. Thirdly, we should gradually increase, it won't happen overnight. Even when we start, that would be as a pilot project. And then we can gradually increase the rate and the scope of taxes on pollution and resource use. And fourthly, we should and we must engage with not just the businesses, but public at large ahead of any changes, and constantly communicate the impacts to them in a transparent manner, win them over. Because any change that would be imposed would not live for long. There would definitely be reluctance on the part of the public because of the additional costs involved. And lastly, the point that we have already discussed, that the global community, the governments world over would need to work together. Now, if I could quickly come to the question that you actually asked, that why the governments are reluctant in a way to go towards this particular model instead of the traditional model. There are a
Okay,
few reasons.
very quickly, Umar, we need to take some questions as well from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just briefly give you pointers then. Firstly, we are afraid of change, and especially the bureaucracy in our part of the world is very reluctant from change. They are more comfortable with what they know. Secondly, green taxes, even in the public sphere, there is a strong argument in the policy arena, which I've already shared with you, in terms of the cost and lack of global cooperation. And thirdly, the need for increased awareness in the masses. For me, these are the three major challenges. Thank you.
Thanks, Umar. I'm just going to turn to Proma now. She's got some questions from the audience.
Yes,
Go ahead,
thank
Proma.
you very much, Arif. There has been some questions. I would read out for you. One of the audiences asked that what are the employment effects of transitioning to a low carbon economy? You can understand the fear of getting into a low carbon economy, then they are fearing of losing jobs or cutting jobs. So anyone to answer that question?
Who wants to volunteer to answer that question in terms of loss of jobs in a low carbon as we transition?
Yeah.
I'm happy to take that on. I don't see any reason why there should be a concern about transition to low-cost economy for people who are looking for employment. Rather, I think the process of transitioning will open up new avenues for investment and also for people to work in. So I think it would be an opportunity rather than a risk for people who are looking into the job market. But if I were to give them any piece of advice, it would be to actually educate themselves on the current issues and how they can contribute to the transition to this low-cost economy, and in that way they can sort of plug themselves into any industry which is working in that area.
Thank you very much, Munazzel. There is another question that is directed to Piyumi. This is around greenwashing. So the question is more around the more organization expand the information they report and disclose to the stakeholders about any climate commitment and the impact. Then it comes to questions of the disclosures being made, risk exposure, resilience, and there are concerns over what we call greenwashing. So what measures could be taken to prevent that?
Okay, so I think this is like, again, the greenwashing debate, right? So there's only one way, I guess, and that's assurance. And I would say assurance providers would be able to sort of wean out whatever facts that are not right. But assurance is also progressing. So there's limited assurance that's being provided at the moment, but that's still something. And it's, I think, more prevalent in terms of like trying to attract consumers in terms of greenwashing. And there's a lot more active marketing, which is used as part of greenwashing. So as reporting is progressing and as assurance is progressing, and especially regulation is progressing, these are things that are preventable, I would say not 100%, but to a greater extent. But see, ultimately, it's not about the disclosures, right? I mean, what happened to Tesla? It's with Bitcoin, right? Social media is a way more powerful tool to sort of take out the greenwashers even before it hits your annual reports or your disclosures. So I think with the power in the people and that like thumbs up button or the dislike button, I think greenwashing is, I would say, just get captured at some point or the other if you're falsely advertising for things. So I mean that's a simple answer that I can give. I hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Yes, I think you have answered part of the next question as well, which is, do we need to include another statement, let's say sustainability statement, in addition to the core 5 financial statements? And how can we expect from external auditors that they are fulfilling their responsibilities in relationship to sustainability reporting, which I think you have quite nicely answered.
So I think I can just add to that very quickly. Yes, you can have a sustainability report, and I mean that's fantastic if you're asking the question if you're not already having a sustainability report. The form of that report can change. I mean, you can have an integrated report, which means then you don't need a separate sustainability report. Because sustainability is no longer something that's ancillary or an additional or an annex. It should be part of your blood. It should be part of your business's pulse. Should be part of your business model. So integrated reporting is a great tool to build that integrated thinking into it. But if you're starting off, you start off with GRI. I mean, something is better than nothing. I mean, I'm not endorsing anything. There's so many things out there, so many indicators out there that you could start with, but which is a great thing. How do you ensure external auditors are fulfilling their responsibilities? I think we've got international auditing standards. We've got regulators breathing down our necks. We've got so many methodologies that are developed globally that are constantly changing, and we're constantly having to invest in it. KPMG as a whole has invested, I think, $1.5 billion on KPMG Impact, which I'm part of. And we have a global network on ESG that's working so much on different pillars, from decarbonization to human rights. So there's so much that's been invested in it, and we take personal pride and passion in being catalysts. So I think that's a great way to sort of ensure that we're doing our job as well. I mean, if not, we'll be taken to courts. I think we've got enough examples of that. So yeah, rest assured, as professionals, we've got our ethics code. We're in Global Ethics Week. So there's so many safeguards. And I think question to ask yourself is not about the assurance provider, but about yourself. So if you're doing it and you're taking actions, I think that's a thumbs up. And then you can get yourself verified for credibility. Yeah.
Thank you. Very aptly answered.
Yes, I think, Proma, we can ask William the question around greenwash, because a lot of asset managers are going to also rely upon reports from companies for investment purposes. And there's lots of agencies like MSCI, Sustainalytics, who are providing this information. Is it quantitative versus qualitative, William? Do you rely more on the qualitative side than on reports?
Absolutely. All RFPs are mainly qualitative work because beyond the numbers that people fill, you want them to come and present in front of a committee, and it's a 50-50% of the grade to be selected or not. So your performance is something, your risk control is something, but again, your commitment to green and to sustainable is the most important parameter of the equation. So people who enjoy greenwashing will have a short life in this competition, because you can dupe your clients once but not twice. And the greenwashing that's happening is being even picked by regulators in Europe. I'm sorry to keep on using Europe as an example, but it's where these things have been tested and proved already. So recently, a big asset management company, I don't want to add in to their troubles, but have been reported to the regulator by a previous employee who mentioned to the regulator how they were greenwashing internally so many products. So we will see more and more of these things happening. Again, I link it to the culture of the organization. Are you applying internally what you are preaching outside of your organization to your investors? But because internally you're doing bad, one of your employees might leak the information. Sometimes it's just an investigation that one of your existing investors is allowed to come and open the books and have a look. They might then find some discomfort. There are organizations like the Bill Gates Foundation that can come also and put their nose into your books and see if your financial results are as what you promised, but also, are you really delivering in Africa, let's say, what you promised to do, as to sustain some education, some environmental progress. So I think more scrutiny is going to happen because, again, it's an inflated sector now because people want to gather the money. When there is money, people flow in and try to show that they're all green, but we will be able to do scrutiny. And you can hire also some external third-party managers who can do the scrutiny on your behalf. So we might have green auditors going forward who will do this work on your behalf.
Yeah, and that's sort of, those are the new jobs that Munazil was talking about. You know, there can be new jobs connected with, you know, green assurance, etc. You know, one of the biggest examples we had of a sort of greenwash was the Volkswagen sort of software that was responsible for faking their emissions testing on their cars. You know, it was discovered in the USA, and then it went across to Europe. And I think the total cost to Volkswagen was almost $40 billion, you know, in terms of claims and damages and fines. You know, so huge implications if you do try and dodge the regulators. Yeah.
Definitely.
Any other questions, Proma?
No, not from the audiences. There has not been any more questions, Arif. You have, the discussion has been, I think, expanded enough, and you have been able to dive really deep into this conversation. And thank you for that. And without further ado, we are at our time limit, at the end of our time limit as well. I would like to thank all of you on behalf of ACCA MESA for participating in this session and enriching the conversation around the climate action, the most important thing, the buzz right now. And I would like to say bye to the audience as well, and I would give over to Taimur Ali Bairam Khan from ACCA Pakistan to give his closing note. Taimur, over to you, and goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Proma.
Thank you, Proma. Perhaps we can have a final group photo as well.
Yes. I'll be on mute.
Okay.
Just.
Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations on celebrating Global Ethics Week, a 5-part series of panel discussions highlighting regional perspectives across the Middle East and South Asia. I would like to highlight key takeaways with a short recap of the insightful sessions. The first conversation was on how economic crime volumes in digital space are increasing every day, estimated at $1.5 to $3 trillion globally. How regulators' role has evolved in the new digital paradigm. The second discussion was on importance and relevance of digital transformation to accelerating growth of digital economy. It was noted with accelerating speed at which businesses are scaling up, it is imperative to embed ethics in all business models. The third conversation was on how businesses are rethinking sustainable business. How businesses are rethinking sustainable organizations through diversity and inclusion. Through diversity and inclusion, organizations are becoming more innovative and bold, which leads to building better organizational strategies. The fourth discussion was on how sustainable AI adoption is critical to ESG and how board of directors are working on AI adoption. The fifth and last insightful discussion was on climate action and how the profession is adapting to these changes. I would like to once again thank all of you for your grand participation and feedback. We will be releasing a white paper on today's event soon. Finally, I would like to thank all our partners, CFA Society Bangladesh, CFA Society Pakistan, CFA Society Sri Lanka, HBL, ICMA Pakistan, Pakistan Business Council, Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, Pakistan Stock Exchange, Pearl Initiative, and Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. Thank you, all of you, for supporting Global Ethics Week agenda and making it a resounding success. Thanks to all of the panelists in today's session. With that, I would like to close today's event. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Taimur. I don't know if you managed to get a group photo, Proma. Yes, please, everybody, if we can get everybody sort of
everybody
a
on the
large
same
screen.
Yes.
Or if you can make everyone say cheese like always, that would add to the beauty of the picture.
No, we won't say cheese. We'll say net zero.
I have cheesing the whole time.
Right. Have you got us, Proma? Have you got everybody?
No, I can't see you.
Oh, you can't see me. I don't know what's happening.
No. Let's.
Can we get everybody in the center?
Everyone can be seen.
View. We have to, we have to choose the view. Gallery view. Yep.
Okay. Everybody's visible?
Yes.
Yep. Yes, coming. Oh, yes, we got William. We got great. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Bye, Piri. Bye, William.
Bye.
Bye, Omar. Bye, Manazil.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arif, bye for the
Bye,
questions.
guys.
And
Bye.
great talking. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to talk to you.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.